Hey everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at the first story from chapter 19 of the Road to Latin textbook called De Templis Graecis. So before we dive too far in, like I always tell you with these videos, if you want to see more information on the chapter, take a look at my site. You can find vocab help, practice problems, grammar explanations, the stories. You can see them in a different way, looking at, cases highlighted or English translations, whatever you need. So I'd encourage you to take a look just to, if you're looking for any help or any additional resources to work your way through this textbook as you learn Latin, it's there for you. Go for it. You'll be okay. The other thing I want to tell you before we dive into the story is, again, the first step is to really learn the vocab. It's very difficult to translate these stories if you don't know what the vocab is. Your second step should probably be looking through the grammar. Now, in this chapter, the grammar we're going to go over in a second is about a new tense called the imperfect tense, and we'll explain it, and I'll show you where you can learn more about it. But it is a little tricky to read this story if you're not sure what's happening with the verbs. So I'd encourage you to take a look, take some notes, look at the grammar notes I gave you if you're using my website. Any of the videos I posted, they'll all kind of walk you through what's going on. And if you work your way through that, you'll have hopefully a really good understanding of the grammar as well. Mix that with the vocab, and you're in a really good position to succeed and be able to read this story without too much trouble. So again, I'd encourage you to do that before you dive too far in. Before we go into it, though, I just want to give you a little bit of grammar, since I brought it up, that'll help you through this story. So like I said, the thing we're after in this chapter is something called the imperfect tense. And before I go into it, I'll just say that I have 2 YouTube videos that explains this to you in much more detail. So if you're looking for help on understanding what the imperfect tense is, I have one that will get you through active voice imperfect, and another that'll get you through the passive voice imperfect. Both of them are really the heart of the grammar in chapter 19. So if you're looking for a little more help or explanation, more than I can do in this video, I'd encourage you to go check those out. You'll find them there, and it'll guide you through it. But the quick snapshot of what we're doing is trying to, like I said, understand the imperfect tense. And you want to remember, the word tense comes from the Latin tempus, which means time. So all a tense is, it's the timing of when an action happened. So you can hear it in English. We say all the time, past tense, future tense, right? We all kind of understand in general what these tenses are and how to use them, but you want to make sure you can kind of explain them and really dive into it in Latin, because it gets a little bit more complicated than that. So the tense we're in this chapter, right, for the grammar is the imperfect tense. And this is the first one we've seen that's not present. So you're finally going to be able to talk about things that happened in the past. That's what the imperfect tense is used for. But there's kind of a twist to it. It's talking about things in the past that were either continuous, repeated, or they happened over a period of time. So the word imperfect, right, in Latin means not completed, right? Perfectus means completed. It's a not completed action is one way to think about it. So you have to imagine it's more like an action happening over time. So the example I give in my classes is you can think of your birthday, right, your 5th birthday. If you want to look back at your birthday, you can either look at a photo of yourself blowing out the candles on your cake, or you can watch a video of it. The imperfect tense is the video because you're watching something in the past over a period of time, right? It's not just one snapshot image. That's really what the imperfect tense is used for. So in English, we express this usually with the word was, but you can also say used to or kept, and it would still be imperfect tense. So there is a trick to understanding the context of what you're trying to say. But to give you an example, maybe you were someone who went to summer camp or something, right? If you went to summer camp every summer, that would be expressed in the imperfect tense in Latin, because you'd say something like, I used to go to summer camp every summer, or I kept going. It's this continuous or repeated action, right? It's not just one moment where you went to camp, you kept doing it. Another example would be even simpler. If you say, today I was walking down the street. When you say that to someone, I'm not entirely sure when you're walking, right? When you say I was walking down the street or I was walking to school, how long did that take you? Was it 5 minutes, 10 minutes? What am I supposed to visualize when you say that? You get the image of someone moving, right? It's not a picture in your mind. It's more like a movie. That's really where the imperfect tense lives. It's a very common tense in Latin, but you do want to understand it, because in a future chapter, we're going to get to a different way, a couple different ways actually, of expressing actions that happened in the past. So you really want to lock this down now so that you'll be ready for the next few chapters. So how do we form this in Latin? Well, it's actually pretty straightforward. So to form the imperfect tense, you go to the second principal part of your verb, right? If you look up in the dictionary, the second piece, which is your infinitive, you drop the RE. This gives you something that we call the present stem. We've kind of talked about this when we did present tense conjugation. So far, it's the exact same as doing present tense. But now you add something called an infix, which literally is a couple letters put into, right? An infix put into the word. And the infix is ba, B-A. So that's what gives it away as being an imperfect tense verb. You're going to see the BA and you know right away that this is an imperfect verb. Then you add your endings, but instead of OST mus to son, you add MST mus to son. So what you end up with when you're doing imperfect tense active voice are the endings bom, ba, spot, bom, spatus, bom. Now, one trick is when you have third IO and fourth conjugation verbs, in front of the BA, you just have to make sure there's an IE there. If you have a fourth conjugation verb, you're adding an E. If you have a third IO verb, you're really adding an I. The simple version is in front of your BA, there will be an IE. Right? And it's a minor spelling detail. It's not going to really impact your ability to read the Latin, but it is an important note if you're looking to really spell these correctly. When you do passive voice, it's the exact same thing, right? All you do is use the passive endings, though. R, R-I-S-T-U-R, M-U-R, M-I-N-I, N-T-U-R. So instead of bom, ba, spot, if it were passive, you'll see bar, bar, spator, bom, or bomity, bontor. And it's pretty easy to spot. That BA is a very distinct ending when it comes to Latin verbs. So in general, the imperfect tense is one of the easier ones to spot when you're reading Latin. So this is just a quick overview. Like I said, you want to work your way through the textbook, use my website, videos, whatever it is you need to feel really comfortable with this. But once you practice it, and again, if you use the website Magistrula, that would be a really good way to do it too. Once you practice it and get used to it, it's always the same. You're always going to recognize it, and actually it becomes pretty easy to do. You always want to review, but it's not the most complicated thing to learn. So you should be okay with it. Once you have the grammar down, again, before you dive into the story, find someone to read this story to. Latin is a language. If you can find a classmate, read it aloud, practice your speaking and pronunciation, have them read it back to you so you can practice your listening skills. It all really works together to help you understand this language. But once you're there and you're in a place to translate it, you're ready to go. So let's do that right now. So again, this chapter is called De Templis Graecis. It's about Greek temples. Okay, so it starts with liberi cum paedagogo in peristilo sedent. So your subject is the liberi, the children. They are sitting, sedent, just present tense, in the peristyle, which is sort of the columned garden in a house, with their tutor, cum paedagogo. So they're sitting with their tutor in the peristyle. Paedagogus liberis fabulam de templis Graecis narrat, quod in Graecia habitabat. So the paedagogus, the tutor, he is telling, present tense, he is telling a story to the children. Remember when you have verbs of telling, you tell something, accusative, to someone, dative. So the thing he's telling is the fabulum, and he's telling it to the children. Now you have De Templis Graecis, so it's a fabulum, a story about Greek temples, right? There's your ablative prepositional phrase. So he's telling a story about Greek temples because now we're shifting gears. In the first half, that's what he's doing right now, which is why it's present tense. But now we're going to go past tense, imperfect, because habitabat, and you'll notice the ba, bat, that gives away as being imperfect. It doesn't mean he is living. It means he was living or he used to live in this context. So because he used to live in Graecia, in Greece. Why is that imperfect? Well, one, it was in the past, but two, it's over a period of time, right? He lived there for years and years and years. That's why it's imperfect. So he's telling them about Greek temples because he used to live in Greece. Then we go to the next part here, and you have what he's saying to them. You have Graeci multos deos et deas habeban. So the Greeks had imperfect tense. You could say they were having, but sometimes the simplest way to do it is had. They had multos deos et deas, many gods and goddesses, right? That's all accusative. So they had many gods and goddesses. He's talking about in the past. In pulchris templis deos et deas adoraban. So in beautiful temples, there's your ablative prepositional phrase, adoraban, imperfect tense. They were praising, right, adoring, or you could even say they adored is kind of one way to do it. Deos et deas, the gods and goddesses. So again, it's just trying to say that they worship them is kind of the idea. Then you have templa ornabantur columnis altis et aris. So the temples, here we have ornabantur. So the BA tells you it's imperfect. The NTUR ending means it's passive, right? So it's not saying that they, were adorning or were decorating, but they were being decorated. is kind of one way to do it. So you're saying the temples were decorated, or you might say were adorned with columnis altis, with high columns, and altars, aries. Now remember, because it's passive, that's why you have the ablative here, right? The ablative means it's saying how they were decorated or adorned. Then you have magnae statuae deorum et dearum in templis videbantur. So magnae statuae, great statues or large statues, however you want to say it, and it's statues of the gods, deorum, and of the goddesses, dearum, right? They're both genitive plural. Videbantur, again, imperfect, but it's not they were seeing, it's passive because of the NTUR ending. They were seen, right? So great statues of the gods and goddesses were seen in the temples. It means that they were inside and people could go and see them, right? Then you go to the next part. You have Graeci multa dona ad templa mitebant. So the Greeks, mitebant, imperfect because of the ba, and it's just active voice because of the NT. So the Greeks were sending multa dona. They were sending many gifts to the temples, right? Ad templa. Frumentum ab agricolis et aurum anautis mitebatur. So corn or grain, frumentum, right? I guess corn is kind of the idea. It's like food, right? Mitebatur was sent rather. The BA makes it imperfect and the TUR makes it passive. So corn was sent by the farmers as your ablative of agent because we have a passive voice verb. And aurum, gold, was sent nautis, by the sailors. So it's showing how sailors and farmers, they send different things. Okay? Then you have quotidie magna Januae templorum aperiebantur nam Graeci ad templa saipe veniebant. So the quotidie part is every day or daily. The magna Januae, the great doors, templorum, of the temple, genitive. Aperiebantur is imperfect passive, not they were opening, but they were being opened, or they were opened, you could say. So every day the doors were opened for nam Graeci, the Greeks, saipe veniebant. They often were coming. Again, veniebant is imperfect active voice, right? So they often were coming ad templa, rather, to the temples. So it's saying they often came to these temples, so you had to have the doors open, right? That's the general idea of it. Then you have Olympia, oppidum pulchrum in Graecia erat. So Olympia, right? It was a beautiful town in oppidum pulchrum. So Olympia was a beautiful town in Graecia, in Greece. Olympiae erat multa templa. So here you're saying there were many temples, multa templa. Olympiae here is going to be locative in Olympia. Remember when you have the name of a city and you're trying to show that you're inside it, you use this locative case. In first declension, it looks like genitive AE. That's what you're seeing here. So at Olympia, or in Olympia, you might say, there were many temples. Hic erat templum Dei maximi. So here there was a temple, right, a templum of the greatest God, right? Dei maximi is genitive. So there was a temple of the greatest God, which of course is talking about Zeus. Then you have in solio alto Deus sedebat. So in a high throne, or you might even say like on a high throne or a tall throne, however you want to do it, the God was sitting, imperfect tense. This is referencing one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. You can actually see it to the right here in this picture, the statue of Zeus at Olympia. This is a famous statue. It's called chryselephantine. It's made out of ivory and gold by the great sculptor Phidias, where the statue of Zeus was made to look like if he stood up, he would burst through the ceiling. We have little remnants of it, a lot of depictions of it, but this is one of those, it's written down as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. I'd encourage you to look it up. That's what they're referencing here. Then you have Deus a viris et feminis adorabatur et timebatur. So the God, adorabatur is imperfect tense passive voice, was worshipped by, again, ablative of agent because we have a passive voice verb. He or it, I guess you'd say, he was worshipped by men and by women, right? Viris et feminis, both ablative. That's your ablative of agent. And timebatur, and he was feared by men and women. Right? So you're always a little afraid, the Greek gods, right? You don't want bad things to happen to you, so they're a little afraid of them. Then you have Deus verba virorum et feminarum audiebat et consilia regebat. So the god, meaning Zeus in this case, audiebat, he was listening or he was hearing, you might say, or heard, you could simplify it, but he heard the verba virorum, the words of men, et feminarum, and of women. By words, it really means like their prayers, right? And he consilia regebat, he sort of directed, you might say, regebat, he sort of means like he ruled or he gave a ruling, is one way to do it. But you could say he guided, directed them. There's a couple different ways we've translated in this chapter, but he guided them or he directed plans, consilia. It means he gave them plans, right? So they speak to him saying, what should I do? And Zeus responds, giving them ideas, apparently, what to do. Statua numquam reliquebatur, sed semper custodiebatur. So the statue never relinquebatur, right? It never was abandoned, you might say. Relinquebatur probably works best here. It's imperfect passive, right? So it was never abandoned, but always custodiebatur, again, imperfect passive. It always was guarded. So it's never left behind and abandoned. There's always someone there watching it because it's made out of precious materials, right? And it's a famous statue. So it was always guarded. So that's the story for chapter 19. The book is giving you a nice dose of imperfect verbs, active and passive. So if you read through this and really look at what's happening, you should get the practice you need on how to form the imperfect and translate it active and passive voice. So hopefully it went pretty well for you. Again, if you're stuck, go back, look at the grammar, kind of do what we call the read and reread method. So read it once, write down any areas you're stuck, look all those areas, sentences, phrases, words, whatever, look them up, and then read it again. And on that second read, or sometimes I'd say even the third read, eventually it'll sink in where you're not living in the dictionary and you're able to read this pretty fluently. That's where you want to be before you move on. If you have any questions at all, put them in the comments below. I'm happy to help you. But otherwise, like I always tell you, keep at it, keep practicing, and you should get better as you go. Good luck.